Welcome to Movie Speeching. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take good care. Today, I will introduce the 2022 drama in our prime. Han Ji-woo can't get used to one of the most prestigious high schools in Korea where 1% gather. He was the brightest student at his impoverished alma mater, but here he was surrounded by geniuses, especially in mathematics, considered the most important subject for college admission, just short of the bottom of his class. His classmates are wealthy enough to hire tutors and boot camps, but Gio relies on welfare for his students, which he can't afford. Mathematics teacher Kim Gun-ho tells Ji-woo that his grades aren't good enough to get him into a prestigious university, so he asks Ji-woo to consider transferring. One night, Gio gets money from his roommate so he can sneak out and buy snacks and drinks for everyone. However, on the way home, Ji-woo is caught by the night watchman, Lee Hak-sung. The next morning, Mr. Kim tries to get him to confess who else was involved in the conspiracy, but Ji-woo maintains his silence out of loyalty. This catches the attention of his classmate Park Borum, but he is temporarily kicked out of the dormitory. After class, the roommates try to give him some money as a thank you, but they are shocked to hear that Ji-woo doesn't want the money because they are friends. They discuss the possibility of transporting the midnight snack by another means, but with Hak-sung working as a security guard, that is no longer possible. They call him Commissioner because he is a North Korean defector. Later, Hak-sung goes to his doctor, who tells him that working as a night watchman is not good for his health, and that taking sleeping pills disrupts his circadian rhythm. Hak-sung reminds him that this is the only job he can get as a North Korean defector. So if the doctor didn't give him another job, he would be on medication. Hak-sung then returns to his lonely apartment and spends his time feeding turtles, drinking strawberry milk and solving Sudoku puzzles. The next day, Ji-woo is kicked out of the dormitory. Borum teased him on the way out and thought he wasn't just a loser, but apparently he was wrong, he says. A few hours later, Ji-woo returned to his family's apartment and cleaned the room before his mother returned from work. She is a widow and she has always worked hard to raise her son, so I am very proud to see her son in such a precious uniform. Ji-woo, who didn't have the courage to tell her that he needed a place to sleep for him, instead said that he had just come to see her. He needed to go back to his school before it was too late. When it starts to rain on the way home, Ji-woo tries to hide in an abandoned school lab, but Hak-sung finds him. A security guard makes Ji-woo sick when he hears he has nowhere to stay and calls him back to the office. While Ji-woo sleeps, Hak-sung finds a very difficult math homework that Ji-woo couldn't solve. As soon as the sun rises, Hak-sung knocks Ji-woo out. The boy goes to math class and is shocked that Hak-sung has done his homework. Not only that, but all the answers were correct. Borum notices this and asks Ji-woo to show it to the teacher, but the teacher asks him to shut up. After class, Ji-woo thanks Hak-sung for his help and asks him to teach him how to do it, but Hak-sung only kicks him out again. Later, in the study room, Ji-woo shows how special Hak-sung is when he hears that even his classmate's tutor struggles with some of his math problems. Ji-woo tails him and begs for a tutor, but Hak-sung doesn't listen to him. One afternoon, while taking out the trash, Hak-sung overhears teachers talking about welfare students with insensitive parents and inferiority complexes, and Kim puts Ji-woo on the list. When Ji-woo approaches to tutor again, Hak-sung tells him that he should switch and that self-pity is not a trademark, because it locks him in tragedy. Ji-woo explains how frustrating it is that other people have opportunities they don't have, so Hak-sung relents and accepts being a tutor, but asks Ji-woo only for strawberry milk. The next day, Hak-sung visits his friend on Ki-chul, who works as a North Korean defector support manager in Seoul and helped him get to South Korea. The two play board games together and talk about life. When Ki-chul gives Hak-sung the lamp he needs, Hak-sung insists that he pays because he did not come to this country for his charity work. At night, Hak-sung places a lamp in an abandoned lab so that he can secretly teach Ji-woo there. There are his 3 rules that Ji-woo must follow. First, no one is allowed to know anything about these classes. Second, non-mathematical questions are prohibited. Third, Hak-sung will be teaching math, but I don't want to hear about his grades or tests. After Ji-woo promises to follow all the rules, Hak-sung gives him his first exercise. It's about finding the area of a triangle. Ji-woo quickly solves the problem, pointing out that it is a middle school problem, but Hak-sung tells him that he is wrong by drawing a circle around the triangle. Jiwoo feels betrayed and thinks Haksun is unfair because he asked the wrong question, but Haksun implies that his approach to problem solving is wrong. Yes, finding the answer is important, but understanding the question is even more important. All mathematics is a process of finding solutions. When Jiwoo demonstrates that he understands the concept, Haksun calls it epsilon, because there is a flashback to when he and his friends were young and were given fancy pens as prizes for academic success. Epsilon means small, insignificant, even trivial. After class, Jiwoo has nowhere to go, but Haksun allows him to stay with him. Jiwoo finds out that Haksun likes listening to classical music on an old tape recorder, and they talk about classical composers for a while, allowing Haksun to avoid questioning Jiwoo about his past. Jiwoo plays the song on his mobile phone, as the cassette is worn out and of poor quality. Haksun was fascinated by the sound quality, and he slept soundly for the first time in a long time. In fact, he stayed in bed late the next morning, and when he woke up, Jiwoo had already gone to class. Teacher Kim has an important message for math students. Instead of a final exam, his class will enter the prestigious Pythagorean math contest, which counts as an exam. The teens aren't happy with that, as they only have 2 months of practice, but Kim hopes they all win gold. Jiwoo visits Haksun every day for math class. Boram notices that Jiwoo frequently buys strawberry milk as if he had become addicted. One night, a particularly difficult task arises that Jiwoo needs to know the techniques to solve, but Haksun explains that he expects Jiwoo to manually sum everything up. 3 hours later, Jio manages to solve the problem and Haksun shows him something special. The famous mathematician Bernhard Riemann manually calculated the square root of 2 with 38 decimal places to familiarize himself with the solution process. You can't do that just by memorizing formulas. This is very helpful in understanding mathematics more deeply. Haksun refuses to tell Jiwoo if his answer is right or wrong, because Jiwoo's homework is to find the answer by himself, because that is the job of mathematicians. As the weeks go by, Jio improves his math skills day by day. One afternoon he received shocking news. A close friend and fellow welfare student of his transferred to his alma mater and admits it was never worth coming here. Jiwoo has to think about his situation, and Boram tries to listen to him, but she tries to dissuade him by saying that they are in the same situation, even though in reality she is also rich. I felt that I was making fun of you. The conversation is interrupted when Boram's mother picks her up. Getting into her car, Boram scolds her that she was playing with a welfare child. Boram is also technically on welfare because his parents are divorced, but he doesn't receive any financial support from him, so it's not really the same. Her mother also scolds him for listening to piano music because he wants to concentrate on his studies. That's why I hired Mr. Kim as Mr. Boram's tutor, which is illegal. Jiwoo tells Haksun about his girlfriend, wondering if he should switch too. Haksun encourages you not to give up and reminds you that the key to success is not intelligence but the courage to stick through. To prove his point, he shows Jiwoo a modified exercise. The final solution contains some mistakes, but the boy learned the process of solving them correctly. That night, Jiwoo's suspension ends and he is able to return to his dorm, but Jiwoo admits that he missed the shared space with Haksun. The next day, Boram gives him strawberry milk with an apology, but when he distracts her, she follows him to an abandoned laboratory and learns his secret. After thanking Haksun for taking care of Jiwoo, she sometimes asks him if he can come to his house, and Haksun agrees as long as he keeps it a secret. Boram also calls him Commander, confusing Haksun. Although he is from North Korea, he has never served in the military. For reasons he does not want to explain, he was exonerated. At that moment, he notices a group of students sneaking around campus, but Haksun, who finally learns what happened to Jiwoo, decides not to do anything about it. Another evening, Jio Haksun asked why he studied mathematics so intensely. He explains that at first it was for scholarships and family, but the more he knew, the more beautiful it was, and the more he fell in love. They then call Boram to Haksun in front of the piano and have her teach her a nice little trick. Match each number to a note and play the number pi together to compose a beautiful melody. During the next math class, Jiwoo corrects Mr. Kim's exercise answers using the logic Haksun taught him about the wrong problem. But Teacher Kim scolds him. He said, the answer may be correct, but it's not what the examiner intended. That's all the student has to worry about, finding the expected answer, not the correct answer. It's all a matter of test technique, but Ji-woo doesn't accept it and replies that the test will give the correct answers anyway. Miss Kim finds this attitude rude of him and leaves him at the door for the rest of the class. After that, Ji-woo tells Mr. Kim that he will not be transferred. In the afternoon, when Hak-sun visits again, Ji-cheol gives him a smartphone to help him find him. Hak-sun then happily showed it to Ji-woo, who said the boy was reading a long paper on the small screen. To help with that, Ji-woo has a classmate secretly take him to the computer room and asks him to print out the entire document. The next day is the Pythagorean test. Ji-woo is improving thanks to Hak-sun's tutoring, and Bo-ram learns the music well at first, but he soon becomes frustrated. When her pressure hits her, she leaves her classroom without passing her exam. Her mother lets her stay at her house to avoid her embarrassment and lies that she is going on a trip to her school. Even when Ji-woo tries to contact her, all his messages are ignored. That night, Ji-woo and Hak-sun go to a classical concert where Bo-ram gets free tickets because it is sponsored by his family's company. Bo-ram never shows up, but at least Hak-sun is enjoying himself to tears. Hak-sun then invites Ji-woo to dinner, and Ji-woo realizes that it is the first time he sees Hak-sun eating. That same night, someone posted the Pythagorean test on the internet, causing trouble for teachers. Teachers don't want school boards to fire teachers unless they find students to take the tests. Meanwhile, Ji-woo and Hak-sun go shopping at a bookstore when a stranger notices Hak-sun. This man is also from North Korea, and he calls Hak-sun doctor because he remembers giving lectures at the university where Hak-sun attended. The man calls Hak-sun a famous math genius and believes Ji-woo to be his son, which puts him in an awkward position. Hak-sun thanks the man for reminding him and rushes out of the store, but refuses to answer Ji-woo's questions. Back home, Hak-sun recalls the good times he had with his son Lee Tae-young. We ate dinner together, bought a turtle, and bought strawberry milk because it was Tae-young's favorite milk. The next day, some important news was televised. One of his most important mathematical problems, the Riemann hypothesis, is about to be solved by a famous North Higher Federation named Lee Hak-sung and is still under consideration by a committee of scientists. Professor Oh participated in the Mathematics Olympiad when he was a child and talked on television about how he met Hak-sun, who represented North Korea and South Korea. Both received expensive pens from famous mathematicians, which Oh still owns today. Both Ki-cheol and Ji-woo saw the message, and it was Ji-woo who first spotted Hak-sun and questioned him. However, Hak-sun was furious and told him never to mention the Riemann hypothesis again. Meanwhile, Kim struggles with the lab incident as her reputation is at stake, but finds solace when a colleague checks safety records after a student leaks the rumor. The next day, Mr. Kim called Ji-woo and showed him a recording of him sneaking out of the computer room with printed materials. Ji-woo tries to explain that there is nothing to do, but there is no way to prove it. Given the tape evidence and the fact that you can magically improve at math in a matter of months, no one will believe it. So Mr. Kim offers him a deal. If he accepts the transfer, he will not reveal his crimes. Unfortunately, rumors are still circulating that Ji-woo was involved in the exposure, and Bo-ram is upset because he knows the truth. Ji-cheol also has some issues of its own. North Korea is angered by South Korea's hog of Hak-sun's work, especially as these discoveries relate to military cryptography. The NIS wants Ki-cheol to persuade Hak-sun to appear on TV to solve the problem. Hak-sun's name is now widely in the news, and his old colleagues have even visited him and persuaded him to return to the North with him. But when he admits he asked for it, he fails on the grounds that if he takes Hak-sun, he will get forgiveness, only to anger him by bringing up what happened to his son. Ki-cheol visits Hak-sun and apologizes for not being able to keep the NIS away, but Hak-sun is still grateful for his years of protection. As Hak-sun is packing to leave town, Ki-cheol finds the research papers that Hak-sun had tried to throw away years ago and was too valuable for junk and kept by Ki-cheol. Return to Hak-sun. At that moment, Ji-woo also arrives, but decides to stay outside as he hears screams. Hak-sun, furious that the study has taken his son's life, refuses to televise it. After Ki-cheol leaves, Ji-woo tries to talk to Hak-sun, but the old man only lashes out at Hak-sun and refuses to accept that the two have become close friends as teacher and student. Later, Jiwoo gets a call from an angry Boram, who doesn't understand why he's slandering her, but he hangs up, saying he's done. Meanwhile, Haek-sun arrives at the bus stop and begins to remember the night Tion died, thinking he saw his son's face at a stranger's house. After fighting again to protect his followers, Tion got into an argument with his father, accusing him of selfishly fleeing south while his mother was sick with tuberculosis and not doing so. Haek-sun claimed he was doing it to give his son a better life, but Tion said that for academics, doing entry-level work and being treated like dirt is far from a better life. It pointed out, after begging his father to just do math and enjoy life, Tion ran away and tried to swim back north, but was promptly shot dead by border guards. Back at Jiwoo's house, he sneaks into her home to stamp her transfer form while her mother is sleeping. The next morning, he handed the papers over to Mr. Kim, who told him he had done the right thing. Haek-sun hides in a hotel, and Ki-cheol looks for Haek-sun to take him to a TV show, but is surprised to receive a call from Boram announcing Jiwoo's transfer. The Pythagoras Prize ceremony will be held this afternoon. Jiwoo is on his way home from school when suddenly Boram comes and drags him into the auditorium and steals his belongings. Professor O begins the ceremony with a speech about a recently proven theory, but at that moment, Haek-sun, who is rushing to school after releasing a turtle into the river, decides to interrupt the professor. When he presented his pen as identification, Professor O welcomed him with open arms and allowed him to speak. After joking about his job as a security guard, Haek-sun confesses that he was the one who taught Jiwoo math and turns in his printed papers as proof that he didn't miss the test. He also revealed that it was Kim who passed the test on to his students, who walked away in anger and shame. Then, Haek-sun shares a bit of his story. He defected North Korea so he could study math properly, because his own government was using his research to build weapons. He wants his math to be used to find jobs and get into good colleges, but such greed cost him his son's life. Haek-sun is ashamed of his choices, yet Jiwoo never saw him that way and stayed loyal to his secret until the end, even if it would cost him his future. Crying, Haek-sun apologizes and thanks Jiwoo for believing in him, and such speech makes Ki-cheol, who has been listening all along, leave without even asking about the TV interview. He does, however, wait for Haek-sun outside and offer him a ride. After throwing away the smartphone he had gifted him, Ki-cheol reveals a little surprise for Haek-sun, a new, legal passport that marks Haek-sun as a South Korean citizen, and tickets for him to leave town so the NIS can't find him for a while. Ki-cheol will probably get fired for this, but he thinks it's worth it. Sometime later, Ki-cheol visits Jiwoo and gives him a famous pen and the first draft of the paper, a gift left by Haek-sun. 3 years later, Zayu and his college classmates attend the prestigious Oberwolfach Institute of Mathematics. Haek-sun now works there, and Jiwoo surprises Haek-sun with strawberry milk and a hug before getting into a long conversation about math. Thank you for watching. See you on the next video.